Other people matter. The title of this talk comes from my good friend, Chris Peterson, who is one of the founding fathers of positive psychology. Sadly, we lost him too soon. He literally wrote the book on character strengths together with Marty Seligman. But one of the points he made very famous in the early days of the science of happiness is that other people matter, because the very first considerations of this field were so much on the individual happiness, individual strengths, and he just wanted people not to miss this most primary fact of other folk, that we shouldn't be so focused on our own happiness that we forget about how other people are involved in that. So in the spirit of Other People Matter, I just wanted to thank the Greater Good Science Center, Jason, Dacker, Emiliana, Eve, and all the amazing Greater Good volunteers that are running around taking care of us all. So I think we all owe a great debt of gratitude for the holding and the intellectual feast that we're getting here. So thank you to them. And to 1440 and the way they've created this beautiful context for us to learn and grow together. So one of the other things that Christopher Peterson said, and he was the first one to write a textbook on positive psychology, and a line of his that I always repeat in my classes as well, is positive psychology is not a spectator sport. There's no way that you can learn the concepts of this without diving in and trying them. So I was delighted to be following Jason's exercise of fast friends, because just even creating those quick connections, like just now and like yesterday in the eye contact meditation we did with Jack, that what I'd love to just hear for you is when you go from stranger to, someone's a stranger to connecting in that way, what does it take? What skills do you bring to bear? What approaches do you bring to bear? And then also, what does it create? Anybody want to just say what are some of the ways that you have to bring yourself into that situation? Yeah.
Really have to make an effort and get out of yourself and reach out. And for me, it's easy and it brings me so much joy. I do it in an elevator and it can make my day.
Uh-huh.
Or at the grocery store, and just that feeling connection, I love.
Yeah.
If I was an introvert, just going off to college, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hope everybody, is trouble hearing when somebody speaks? Can you guys hear? No, okay, I'll repeat it. Just briefly though, she was saying you have to put in some effort to this. And for some people that comes naturally, extroverts among us. And for some people, it's more of a challenge, the introverts among us. I'm probably one of the most introverted people in this room. The context is not showing that right now. But that what comes from it, once you step over that vulnerability and put in the effort, and the effort involves things like undivided attention, eye contact. How many people in your fast friends ended up in some way using touch? Yeah, quite a few. You might find a way to indicate safety and connection in that way. So, and what does it create on the other side? I mean, what happens in a room, or from before and after the eye contact connection, or from before and after the fast friends? In the back, yes? Right, so a sense of commonality, this sense of the boundaries maybe between you and the other kind of slip away. Commonality, anyone else? Yes?
Sense of warmth and also a sense of safety.
Warmth and safety, that didn't exist prior to that, and then just grows up from that context. Okay, yeah?
Sense of well-being.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So well-being, universal connection. Yes?
Somebody liked me.
Yeah, somebody liked you. Acceptance. Does anybody feel energized, uplifted? Yeah, okay, so it's also a way to kind of quickly energize the social space around us. I'm going to be talking about those kind of micro moments of connection, micro moments of positive connection, which are sometimes overlooked, but end up, I think, being a crucial ingredient to human well-being. So much so, just to foreshadow what I'm going to share later, this is a health behavior. This is like eating our vegetables and staying physically active. We need to think of these micro moments of connection that we have with everybody as being really vital to what we humans need to survive and thrive. So, and another way I'm going to frame the ideas I'm going to share with you is, what is a smile for? We know from all kinds of experience and research that, the smile is the most ubiquitous marker of positive emotions. And there have been many different theories on why humans smile. And so I'm going to share with you some ideas and then come back to this question at the end. Why is it that the smile exists? What is its evolved adaptive function? So that's a question I hope to answer later. One thing that is true about positive emotions, and this is especially vital to recognize within the broader field of positive psychology or the science of happiness, positive emotions are fleeting. They rise up like a wave and they dissipate. All emotions do this. No emotion is designed to last. Emotions are our responses to the ever-changing circumstances we find ourselves in, and if we try to have nonstop joy, it's not fitting our circumstances. What seems to matter is the frequency of mild waves of positivity, not their duration or their intensity. So we need to be thinking of these as micro moments. The other thing about positive emotions, these momentary waves of uplift, is that they are deeply embodied states. This is a slide from a study where they asked hundreds of people in multiple cultures to indicate what parts of the body feel energized or activated when you feel different emotions. And the warmer colors here, the red to yellow, indicate areas of the body that feel activated with emotions. The blue, cooler areas are areas that people say feel deactivated with emotions. So you can see neutral is very little activation, if anything, deactivation. Sadness is a lot of deactivation, kind of heavy limbs, perhaps. Happiness is like this full body experience. A lot of activity in the heart and the mind, but all the way through our limbs, more so than other negative emotions. And so that's something that we need to remember, is that emotions are deeply embodied and they energize our whole being. And what I'm going to share just very briefly the Broaden-and-Build theory of positive emotions, because it's a stepping stone to this new view of love that I wrote about in my book, Love 2.0. I think as a society, too often we think of love and romance as synonymous. And what I'm trying to put forth in Love 2.0 is this idea that, maybe it's not that long and intense love relationship that is the only way to think about love. I think we can also think of these short-lived, uplived, energized moments as the momentary building block of the other bonded love relationships, but also of health and well-being in a community. And so the Broaden-and-Build theory has two components, broaden and build. They happen on very different time scales. The broaden part of the Broaden-and-Build theory says that when we have this momentary upwelling of positive emotions, that fundamentally changes the way the human brain works. Brain imaging studies show this, eye tracking studies show this, that the boundaries of our awareness expand. We literally see more in the periphery, and when we're able to see more and take more in, we're able to integrate ideas in a broader way, and it unlocks creativity. So during positive emotions, our awareness expands. Now, that's a temporary effect of positive emotions, as temporary as that uplifted feeling. It matters, though, because little by little, it nourishes our growth. In the same way that eating your fruits and vegetables nourishes growth, our day-to-day momentary experiences of positive emotions, having more of these broadened, open mindsets, creates opportunities to build resources like resilience, connections, physical health, our cognitive maps. Once you explore and take a hike, you have a better sense of where you are. So that openness automatically creates opportunities for learning that help us become better versions of ourselves. Positive emotions are nature's way of guaranteeing that we develop and become more resourceful over time. One way positive emotions open our awareness is not just changing our peripheral vision, but unlocking other focus. You know, so often we can be wrapped up in a cocoon of self-absorption, and positive emotions kind of break that open. It's like, oh, there are other people here. And so you begin to have experiences that are more interwoven with others. And what we find in our research is that when people experience positive emotions on a more regular basis, they're more likely to think and speak in terms of we than in terms of me versus you. So the people see that interconnection more during positive states. And early in my career, I focused a lot on how positive emotions affect one person's physiology, one person's thinking, one person's social cognition. And more recently, I'm interested in looking at how people co-experience positive emotions and what is entailed in that communal experience of positive emotions. And so if I'm arguing that our daily diets of positive emotions are nutrients for growth, I used to think that all positive emotions were similarly nutritious. I actually now see evidence in the data to suggest that, you know, these co-experienced positive emotions are like superfoods, extra rich in nutrients. Now, my high school student says, Mom, superfoods aren't a real thing. It's just a marketing ploy. But I'm still going to use that analogy. And so this idea that there may be some positive emotions that nourish the body and our health and well-being to an even greater degree. And so I'm going to argue that these co-experienced positive emotions do that. And so I'm moving from this concept of positive emotions as an individual experience, which is, to be honest, a very Western view of emotions, that they belong to individuals. My interest, your fear, his joy. I think for linguistic convenience only, kind of separate them across, as owned by individuals. I'm going to be talking about a concept that I call positivity resonance, which I think is the most elemental building block of love, and that this is defined as micro moments of shared positivity with some other ingredients wrapped in. Just to give you some images of positivity resonance so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. Could be sharing a laugh with a friend or a new fast friend in the context here. Could be celebrating a coworker's success or a joint achievement. It can be holding your neighbor in compassion. Now, compassion, we usually think, oh, the most dominant emotion is negative. And it's true. Suffering is the big overarching experience. But when your suffering is seen by another person, there's a thread of positivity in that because you feel that somebody understands. You feel seen. And when you're the one that's able to see and hold somebody else's suffering, that actually feels good. It feels that we're being able to offer something. So even though negative emotions are the most predominant emotion in a compassion enactment, there is a thread of shared positivity there that I would argue is positivity resonance. I think the cleanest example of positivity resonance is smiling at a baby. It doesn't have to be your baby. It could be the baby on the plane or the baby in the cafe. And the reason this is such a clean example is that there are no roles, there's no self. The way we engage with a pre-verbal infant is all through this little dance of facial expression. And it's a very attuned dance. If you do this too sharply, too intensely, that baby's going to cry. So you have to be really attuned, like, is this still good? Yeah, ooh, peekaboo. So that's, it's this dance of connection that developmental psychologists have shown it's like fertilizer for healthy growth for kids. The reason we know this is that having a depressed caregiver disrupts this dance of connection. Depressed caregivers don't mimic the actions of the infants in their charge because they're dealing with those deactivated limbs, that we saw earlier. So, and are less likely to get into that shared positive space. Now, what I'm doing with this in Love 2.0 and in the research that has followed that is kind of creating a mashup of two areas of psychology. One is relationship science and one is affective science or emotion science. And psychology is a huge field. These are two areas that hardly speak to one another, which is crazy. But I've had a number of collaborators who come through that relationship science side who have really inspired my thinking. Sarah Aljo's work on gratitude and shared laughter is one of my colleagues who's influenced my thinking the most. And so there are two views of love from relationship science that are foundational to the way I'm thinking about this. One is that there are essential features of love relationships. Whether you're thinking, researchers have studied all different kinds of love relationships. The love you might have for your child, for your soulmate, for your spouse, for your best friend. And ask people to imagine those relationships with certain features subtracted. And with one particular feature subtracted, people are no longer willing to call it love. That feature is investment in the well-being of the other person for his or her own sake. And Dacker mentioned my earlier work on the objectification of women. That's like the exact opposite of this. People are really invested in the looks of somebody for their own benefit rather than for that person's benefit. Okay, so that would be a barrier to this. But investment in the well-being of another person for his or her own sake, that's a core feature of love relationships. So it's not, people are not willing to call it love if it's just this person makes you breakfast in the morning or pays your tuition, and so on. The other side of that is this concept, jargon phrase called perceived responsiveness. I think the way to translate that into human speak is feeling like someone really gets you, and they use that privileged knowledge of you for your benefit. So what does it feel like when someone invests in your own well-being for your own sake? You feel seen, understood, cared for, and validated. And that perceived responsiveness, seeing that another person is responsive to us as individuals is just a key feature of intimacy. And this mutual perceived responsiveness is viewed as a core element of intimate relationships. Now, what emotion science can add is a recognition that these good states, investment in the well-being of the other and feeling seen, they're not a status that we toggle into and then stay there for years. They're momentary experiences. So for example, right now, I love my husband. We are devoted and committed to one another. But right now, I have no idea what he's doing. And he vaguely knows I'm on stage. But right in this moment, I'm not feeling seen and understood by him and investing in his well-being because we're doing other things. But when we come back together, we'll have those kind of moments. So what emotion science can add is the honest recognition that these are momentary experiences of seeing and being seen. It can also add that, again, these aren't just a status that we click into that kind of is an idea in our head, that these are deeply embodied experiences. Remember the figure of happiness there. That was activation and energized all over the body, especially the heart, especially the mind. So we need to be thinking of these states as having biological and behavioral components, not just knowledge components. And then the other thing emotion science can add is this broaden-and-build theoretical backdrop. And the important part there is that there are some features of positive emotions that characterize the moment, and other features that come little by little, accrue over time as resources are built. So the definition, don't touch the scarf. That's the mic. Okay. Instant feedback. Positivity resonance, the definition of it is an interpersonally situated experience marked by a momentary upwelling of three features. One of those features, and perhaps the most obvious, is a shared positive affect. Two other features are essential as well, and that is mutual care and concern. This is the investment in the well-being of the other and perceived responsiveness, kind of distilled to its essence of mutual care. And it's not the kind of heavy caretaking role that we think of. It's that with your fast friend or with the person you connected with yesterday, I don't know if Rory's here, my new friend from that context. Oh, hey, Rory. If something, this was all a fairly positive experience, but if you were standing outside and a limb from a tree fell down and hit your partner, you would be immediately brought in to see if they're okay. Okay, it's that light form of care and concern. And there's also a biological and behavioral synchrony in these moments. You can see this from afar when two people are really connecting. You see that their gestures kind of are at the same tempo. Their facial expressions are kind of blooming into smiles at the same time. That is the outer part of this synchrony. There's a deep inner part of this synchrony where people's physiology starts to move together. Their neurochemistry starts to look more similar to one another, and I'll share some work on that. These kinds of moments, they're the waves that rise up and they dissipate. But having more of those moments builds important social resources. The first piece of it would be, what did you feel with a fast friend? You feel like you clicked, you connected. But there's an energized way in which it's not just an idea. It's like you really felt something energize both of you. It also is the way social bonds are built. The people that are the most important in our lives, in that inner circle, are ones who we've had plenty of these positive experiences with. Now, those bonds may end up being unconditional and lasting, but if we want to understand how to build them more over time, understanding how these momentary features come together can help us know how to strengthen social bonds and also build commitment, loyalty, and trust. In organizations, in communities, we're often wondering, well, we need more trust here, or we need more commitment to a common cause, and we don't know how to build that. What I'm pointing out here is that these moments of shared positivity are the roots of these more abstract ideas that we know when they're not present. And so shared positivity or shared positivity resonance is a way to build these very important social and community resources. Okay, there's, a lot of people like to think of love as unconditional, and I am here to say that's not the case when you're thinking of positivity resonance, that these kinds of moments do not emerge no matter what, regardless of conditions. There are certain situational conditions that support them, and when those conditions aren't there, these moments are much, much less likely, if not impossible. One is perceived safety. The reason these exercises work here is because you know you're all here and you have that common interest in the safety of knowing that we can trust one another if we just, open ourselves up a little bit. Another precondition is real-time sensory connection. Best exemplified by being face-to-face, best exemplified by being able to make eye contact, but touch is also a key piece, and shared voice is a key piece. So when we use our phones like we used to, up here, instead of down here, we have a way to have this real-time sensory connection because the vocal tract carries so much information about emotional dynamics in a way that obviously text can't. So those are some preconditions for this state to emerge. And what I'm arguing is that positivity resonance is the momentary, most elementary building block of love. Love in our romantic relationships, love in our parent-child relationships, and love in our community settings and with best friends. And also, with strangers. We have done studies that use that technique, the fast friends technique, that use a set of dozens of questions to get people to have successively more intimate self-disclosure. And we find in those studies that above and beyond the positive affect that people feel while they're kind of making this new friend, the degree to which they show behavioral synchrony, their nonverbal behaviors move at the same tempo, that behavioral synchrony predicts how much people will say they really clicked, which we're calling embodied rapport. Not just this abstract idea of rapport, but this sense of energized, uplifted rapport. So that is a key piece of those early starting points of friendships. And then there's this really important, inspiring work by Paula Niedenthal, which points out that smiles, there's so many different kinds of smiles, and that we can often be fooled as to what a person's smile means if a few preconditions are not met. And we become much better at decoding the subtleties of the different smiles when these conditions are met. And to just anchor the different kinds of smiles, there could be the kind of smile where, like, I'm just over here enjoying my chocolate all by myself, just in heaven of savoring. There's times in their day where you want that kind of experience. There are other kinds of smiles that, are kind of domineering smiles, like, I'm better than you. And someone's smiling, but kind of trying to reinforce that hierarchy. And then there are the kind of genuine affiliative smiles that are, I'd like to get to know you. And it's like a warm safety signal. So a smile is not a smile is not a smile. And it turns out that if people if people make eye contact, they're much more likely to mimic a person's smile and the subtleties of it. And with that mimicry, it's not just a surface mimicry, there's a neural mimicry and an embodied mimicry. And that embodied experience of simulating what the other person is expressing informs our gut wisdom to make us feel the same way. So when it's that warm affiliative smile, then we begin to feel warm and affiliative ourselves. But if it's that sort of, greeter at a store smile, or that's kind of transactional, we kind of learn to distrust that sometime. Or it's that domineering smile. You're like, you can kind of feel, yeah, that's not really about connection. What Paul and Edenthal's work shows is that if you disrupt mimicry, people are not good at decoding those subtle differences. But if you let mimicry unfold, her studies randomly assign people to have to wear a hockey mouth guard or not. And of course, if you're wearing this hockey mouth guard, you're not able to mimic the faces that you're seeing. Okay, I want to give you a sense of, oh boy, I'm going to go a little quicker through some of these studies. I'm going to give you a sense of how we measure positivity resonance, and I invite you to be thinking about your fast friend experience from this morning or the connection you built yesterday through the eye contact meditation. The self-report way that we measure this is to ask people, thinking of that episode, that 4 minutes you spent in that fast connection or in that meditation, what proportion of the time did these subjective experiences emerge? What proportion of time did you have a mutual sense of warmth and concern? Were you able to attune to and connect with the other? Did thoughts and feelings flow with ease between you and the others? Did you feel a mutual sense of being energized and uplifted in each other's company? Were you and the other mutually responsive to one another's needs? And did you feel a mutual sense of trust and respect? And did you feel in sync? So these are all like dyadic experiences. Well, this kind of experience could be with more than one other person at a time. A group could feel this. A whole stadium could feel this, perhaps. But for simplicity, I'm going to be talking about dyads. But the degree to which those experiences characterize an episode captures the degree to which positivity resonance has emerged. There are very few episodes where you would answer 100% to all of those, because again, these are fleeting moments. But we know from our studies that those kinds of experiences are thwarted by text-based communication. They emerge much more readily in face-to-face interactions, and it's kind of hit or miss in phone and video chat. Okay, face-to-face really supports these. Text-based communications is negatively correlated with experiencing those. And in studies, we have found these are correlations between getting people to fill out the self-report form about particular episodes of their day. People who have more of these moments score higher on flourishing mental health. They score lower on depression. They score lower on loneliness. And in some of our studies, we see connections to self-reported illness symptoms being lower among those who experience positivity resonance. And of course, these are just correlations here. I think the causal arrow goes in both directions, that when mental health is abundant, you feel safe and are able to engage in these, but also that these kinds of moments help create well-being. I want to share with you real quickly some work I did while I was on sabbatical at Berkeley, working with Bob Levinson and his team of amazing doctoral students and a postdoc. And some of you may know that I did my postdoctoral work in Bob Levinson's lab, so this was like coming full circle to examine a data set that I helped collect 25 years ago. It's a longitudinal study of long-term marriages that had 150 long-term married couples married either more than 15 years or more than 35 years. The time this study was done, there were no scientific studies of long-term marriage. They were all on newlyweds, so this was really a groundbreaking study. Part of the protocol they have is to have couples come into the lab and have a number of conversations. The conversation that we looked at here was the conflict conversation, where they asked people individually to say which topics do you have the most disagreement on with your spouse, and you found one that they both agreed, that they disagree on things like raising their kids, how to handle their money, how to spend their vacation time, or so on. And so while they had these conversations, they measured physiology. I'm just going to talk here about heart rate, sweat gland activity, finger pulse amplitude, which is a measure of vasoconstriction. And they were also videotaped. And those videotapes had been painstakingly coded, second by second, for positive and negative emotions. I know this is a small chart to read, but this is what's called the SPAF coding system. It's measuring specific affects. And here we just reduced it to describe moment by moment each spouse, did they express positive emotions, neutral states, or negative emotions. And just to give you a sense of what kinds of emotional moments are in these conflict conversations, the most common experience is shared negativity. About close to a third of the moments were where both partners were expressing negative emotions. But there are also some moments in there where there's shared positive emotions. And then there's all the other possible moments, shared neutral, or when one person expresses positivity, those are the hashed bars. But this is just characterizes the kind of conversation it was. We just got accepted for publication a paper that describes this new coding system that instead of painstakingly looking at second by second, well, who's showing what on the face, it's a much more kind of overview picture where we ask trained coders to, think about this concept of positivity resonance and ask whether that showed up. And that is, did the couple members show actions, words, voice intonation that conveyed mutual warmth, mutual concern, mutual affection, or a shared tempo? So this is a dyadic level phenomena. Shared smiles and shared laughter count for that. And coders looked at a 30-second bin of videotape and rated whether that was not present at all, present just a little bit, or present a lot. And then we aggregate that up and have a score for the whole 15-minute conversation. And we find that that measure of behavioral indicators of positivity resonance is a much stronger predictor of marital satisfaction than is how much positive affect they felt in the conflict or how much shared positive affect. When we're measuring not just shared positive affect, but that mutual concern and the behavioral synchrony, you bring in all those aspects of the concept together, much stronger predictor of marital satisfaction. We've also looked at physiological synchrony, and I'm just going to share real briefly about this. Okay, so we're second by second, we are measuring physiological responses, and we're looking at the covariation between two people's physiological responses. This is just a measure of the interbeat interval, the milliseconds between heartbeats for each couple member. And here you'll see that we take a 30-second rolling window and do a correlation within that 30-second rolling window. And then that, when they're moving together in the same way, that synchrony is high. And we'll see another moment of that here where they're both dipping down on the interbeat interval. And so the synchrony in that measure is high. And this moment is when there's low, where there's one person changing and the other isn't. And that gives a negative correlation for the synchrony measure. And so that's a way we compute synchrony across individuals at a momentary basis. And one of the things we find, as predicted from positivity resonance theory, is that, time to move on. Thank you. I'm going to just take a minute or so to wrap up this part. The shared positive emotions is associated with more of this shared physiology. There's no such connection with the shared negative. Now, a lot of emotion theorists would have said bad is stronger than good. You're going to see more shared physio with that shared negative, but we don't see that here. And we don't see that with shared neutral. And we see a similar pattern for husbands and wives. And if you break it up into the older couples and the younger couples, this is a very consistent finding. So you might ask, sort of, so what? Why do these moments of physiological linkage during positivity matter? I'm going to show you some data from the longitudinal component of the study, and that is where people came to the lab once every 5 years. So this represents time 1 is when we measured positivity resonance and shared physiology. Time 2 is 5 years later. Time 3 is 5 years later. And these are older people, so chronic illnesses you would expect would increase over 10 years. And we see that for those who have low positivity resonance, we see a buffering of the increase in chronic illness for those individuals who had higher positivity resonance. And there were no differences right at baseline. So we think these are psychological micro moments that are health protective. And just so you don't think that they are only possible within marriage, there's some work to show that, the quality of our micro moments with strangers and acquaintances are a better predictor of our end-of-day mental health than the quality of connection with those in our inner circles. So weak ties end up being particularly important. I'm not going to have time to share with you the work that suggests that these kinds of moments create little miniature tune-ups for the heart and improve our cardiovascular functioning. There's also some work to show that when people are really other-focused, connected, and kind to others, that leads to shifts in gene expression in the immune system that bring us closer to a healthy profile. So they're connected to heart health and immune health. And so these are the kinds of things that lead me to say that these moments are a positive health behavior that we need to be cultivating on a daily basis in order to bring us closer to health. They're forever renewable. You've already been through a macro intervention here, because one of our micro interventions is to just teach people about this concept, show how important it is, and then say, go have more of these moments in daily life. That ends up reducing loneliness, increasing flourishing mental health. So just to give you a quick hack into how to remember to have these moments of connection, ask yourself when, where, and how might you be able to have connections with others. Might be, if I'm in public and I'm tempted to go to my phone, maybe I should try some of that human connection instead. So I promised to get to this question, what is a smile for? Paul Ekman's classic work suggests that smiles evolved to be a readout of an otherwise hidden internal state. Other researchers say, well, the function of a smile really is that it elicits positive emotion in those who see it. Another view, Paula Niedenthal's, is that it creates this inter-subjectivity where a shared smile helps us feel the same as another. Another view says it broadens shared smiles and laughters, broaden collective mindsets, and build collective resources. And I'm saying all of the above, that all of these are just different facets of ways of looking at a smile, and that genuine affiliative smile is a bid to create this life-giving nutrient of positivity resonance, and life-giving because of the the biological markers of health that go with it, and also the mental health attributes as well. So I think I will stop here and say just that we tend to look really far ahead to think, how do we build love relationships? How do we build trusting communities? And sometimes I think the answer is to stop looking so far ahead and then just look at those opportunities in the here and now for creating those connections. So thank you for your kind attention.